Hi, I'm Lena. Hands are one of the hardest things to draw. When I started to learn how to draw, hands were one of the things that I always had issue with. The fingers always looked broken and never seemed to attach to the hand in a natural way. I had a hard time understanding what was wrong until I started to study what a hand actually looks like. Now that I have more experience in drawing hands, they are actually more simpler than they might look. In this video, I will show you how to simplify hands into basic shapes and how to take these simple shapes to draw them in front, side, back and top view. I will also explain how the thumb is attached to the palm and how it bends. The basic proportions of fingers and how the hand connects to the wrist. At the end of the video, I will show you a demo on how to draw gestural hands and how to do your own from imagination. Once you understand these simple structures, drawing hands will be much easier to grasp. Before we are going into any details, let's first simplify the hand into 3 basic shapes. The palm is a rectangle with a triangle on the side, and the fingers are cylindrical or box shapes. Let's start going through how to draw the palm. We start off with a box shape, and let's imagine this box as a very modern, asymmetrical house with a slight offset roof on top. Before we draw any fingers, let's keep in mind that the highest point of the roof is where the middle finger will be placed. Within this box, we are going to map out the muscle groups of the palm, which you can see as 2 hills with a valley in between, and a beautiful sky close to the fingers. The biggest hill is closest to the thumb, and the smaller hill is to the left where the pinky will sit. The sky had 2 clouds overlapping with one another, in this manner where one of the lines will end in between the index and the middle finger, and the other ends around the middle finger. Of course, the lines of the palm is different from person to person, so they are not exactly the same for every human being out there. In the middle of our valley, I will draw a small arrow pointing in towards the hand, which is the transition between the wrist and the palm. This is to add perspective where the palm is coming slightly towards you and the wrist is further to the back. As it comes to the wrist, which we can draw as a cylinder. Something that I did when I started drawing was that I always placed the wrist in the middle of the hand. But if you take a look at your own hand, you will notice that there is almost a straight line going through to the pinky down to the wrist, which means that the wrist is slightly offset and not quite aligned with the hand in the middle. Now let's take a look at the thumb. Draw a triangle on the side that ends roughly before the index finger. At the corner of the triangle, I will place a cylinder, and on the top part of it, I will add a whistle-like shape. This will be the tip of our thumb. A good thing to have in mind is that the thumb will end roughly at the first joint of the index finger. To avoid the fingers going in all kinds of directions, it is easier to try to simplify them as much as possible. The easiest way to do that is to draw them together as a mitten shape first. Next step is to mark the middle of the wrist and draw 2 lines all the way up towards our offset roof. This will help us to find the midpoint of the index finger and the pinky. While following the shape of the mitten, we can use straight lines to separate out the fingers, like we try to chisel them out from stone. When you map out your mitten shape, it is important to follow the arch of the palm, and I repeat this arch 3 times to get a rough estimate on where the finger joints might be. A good thing to keep in mind here is that the finger length is roughly the same length as the palm. If you go beyond that, we might end up in the horror territory. And that might be great if you are aiming for that look, but not so great if you want your hands to look more natural. Try to keep in mind while drawing your mitten shape is that the longest finger is the middle finger, and the index and ring finger are in a similar size, and the smallest finger is the pinky. For the separation between the three parts of the finger, I like to draw them as straight lines first, and then add lines that goes in like this on the sides to add a little bit of dimension and form into the fingers. Note that the thumb will face another direction than the rest of the fingers. If you look at your own hand, you will see that the thumb is facing the side rather than straight towards us. This can be a very important detail that will help your fingers looking more natural. Just like before, we will repeat all the steps that we did for the palm. When we do the back of the hand, or with another name, dorsal side, we draw our modern house first and then the triangle for the base of the thumb. When it comes to the wrist, we draw it in the same way as we did for the palm side. The only difference is that on the dorsal side of the hand, there is a little step down towards the hand from the wrist. This is a similar way Bridgman draws the connection between the wrist and the hand, like a claw gripping around the dorsal side. It creates an appealing look and also an easy way to understand how to create a transition between the wrist and the hand. Within the plane that overlaps the hand, we draw lines radiating from the wrist. These are the representation of the skeleton and the tendons. These lines are drawn all the way to the end of our house, which will help us find the knuckles on the hand. It is important to note that the knuckles should be evenly placed and that we see tendons traveling up towards the finger and down to the wrist. With the shape of the knuckles and the tendons, we can simplify them into a diamond shape. Then we draw the fingers, which you can start off as a mitten shape, the same way as we did for the palm side of the hand. But in this view, we will add the fingernails. The fingernail is a rectangular shape that is smaller at the bottom and wider at the top. Drawing the side of the hand might feel difficult due to the overlapping shapes, especially how the thumb is overlapping the rest of the hand. There is a way to simplify it. Here is how. The thing that is different when it comes to the simple shape is that we are drawing a more slim rectangular shape to represent the thickness of the side of the hand. To make the thumb look more natural, we can place the triangle on the side and then draw the top plane and some of the muscle underneath to create some dimension and depth to the base of the thumb. We know from the dorsal side of the hand that the wrist is gripping the hand like a claw. But how does it look from the side? The connection between the wrist and the hand is not a straight line, but a staircase. So when we draw our cylinder, which is the base shape for our wrist, we draw it higher than the hand. It will create a staircase effect, where we will bridge the gap with the triangle. That will be the transition from the wrist to the hand. This will look more natural since the side of the hand is never straight. It got a slope going down to the fingers. From the side, we don't see the fingers clearly, and the meter shape technique might be harder to apply here if we are not seeing the fingers straight from the side. So what we will do is to draw the index finger and the middle finger separately, and remember that the middle finger will be longer than the index finger, so it will be visible from behind. When it comes to the other side is that we are repeating the same steps, but exclude the thumb and draw the pinky and the ring finger instead of the index and middle finger. I add the muscle group that is around the pinky to make it more believable. When we see the top of the hand, the curved shape on the handbox is more pronounced. You can see the hand from this angle as a bridge. It is structured with two C-like lines at the top and the bottom, but the highest part of the palm will be the middle, if you remember where the offset roof of our modern house, but in another view. From this angle, the thumb will have more of a box-like shape, since we are looking straight at it. The foreshortening of fingers can be frustrating, and it is something that might need a lot of practice. But a tip is to pay attention to the simple forms of the fingers. To foreshorten the fingers, The first step is to map out where on our bridge the finger will be radiating from, and use the middle shape to know how much the fingers will be stretching out from the hand. When you draw the fingers, use a simple cylindrical shape first to block out where the fingers will go. Remember that the tip of the fingers will be the largest shape and will decrease in size as it attaches to the hand. A pro tip that could help selling the foreshortening even further is overlapping of the shape. So the free part of the finger will overlap with one another, and you can use the thickness of lines to emphasize it further. We have focused a lot on structure, and structure alone is not enough to draw good-looking hands. You need gesture in there to make the hands look more lively. This is where manipulating the basic shapes that we are gone through in this video will come in handy. To start off, we need to think of the lower arm and the hand will flow into one another, into a single motion, with as few lines as possible. I do separate lines for the thumb, if you remember that the thumb is going in another direction than the rest of the fingers. I group the other fingers as much as possible and focus on a strong, clear silhouette of the fingers, rather than doing one finger at a time. My tip here is to studying the hand and then do these gestures to practice how to clearly communicate a hand with a few lines as possible. The more simple it is, the easier will it be to remember what it looks like when you draw hands from imagination. When we do our hands from imagination, we start in a similar manner to our gesture studies. We create the same flow of lines, grouping the fingers together before we draw any details. Even if we draw from imagination, it still can be tough to remember all of the shapes. So a helpful tip is to use your own hand as a reference and test the pose out if it looks natural. That's it for me. I hope this video was helpful. Let me know in the comments what you want me to show you next. And if you like this video, here are a couple of other related videos that you might like.